that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 402nd edition of Energy Week. Today, we're recording this on the 21st of January, 2021. It is a Thursday, and we're going to go back to January 14th, a week ago today, to start the material in the show. I want to remind everybody that we need donations to keep this show going. If you go to BrattleboroTV.org and click on the orange donate button, which is in the upper right-hand area of the screen, you can go down and donate via PayPal or credit card. And if you're going to do that to support Energy Week, be sure to put a note in lower on the screen than where the amount is put in, saying that this is to support Energy Week. That way it gets credit to the show. We need about 300, I guess 300 and some odd dollars. It's not a huge amount of money, but donations are coming not in great numbers. So it would be a help if you could do that. Excuse me.
Well, we all have to subsidize the Rolls Royces that we drive.
Yes, absolutely. You know, what can I say? So the other things that I should mention are that this show is based on my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. There's a calendar there that gives the dates of the material. We're starting on the 14th. If you click on the 14th on the calendar, you'll see the blog post for the day, which has 10 to 15 items. And the items that we're talking about are available at that
Some
place.
of them are worth reading.
I would hope that all of them are worth reading. But yeah, some of them are really worth reading. And this last week has got some very fun stuff and some scary stuff. Our first item is from PV Magazine USA. Again, this is on the 14th of January.
And we got a nice picture of Governor Cuomo.
We do indeed. Let me put that up. Okay, I've got a computer that's misbehaving. There we go.
Looks like him.
It looks like him. Yes, it does. And as I said, this is from PV Magazine USA. And what's the title, Tom?
New York governor outlines major renewable energy plans.
Yeah, New York governor, and we're gonna be hitting this again in this show. I think more than once.
This is good.
Yeah, New York Governor Andrew M. Cuomo unveiled a host of initiatives to add renewable energy, build transmission, and boost clean energy economy. He said the green energy program will create more than 50,000 jobs and spur $29 billion in private investment across the state. And he's not kidding.
Well, one of the things he wants to do, according to this article, is he wants to start making wind turbine components in New York.
Which makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. And turn New York, quote, into a global wind energy manufacturing powerhouse.
Yeah, and that could be done. There are wind turbine manufacturers all over the world, and the only one that comes to mind that's in the United States is General Electric. So there's lots of opportunity there, and with the climate change and our need to address it, we're presented with one of the biggest the biggest business opportunity that's ever happened. And here is Governor Cuomo wanting to take advantage of that.
The other thing he's going to be working on is energy storage technology.
Oh man, that is a technology that is just booming. It is astonishing. We talked about that last week.
I remember in college, we spent about 7.5 minutes talking about batteries.
And what was it that you got your degree in, Tom?
Electrical engineering.
Time has changed.
Absolutely. Well, back then, there was only about 3 kinds of batteries available.
Yeah.
And it hadn't changed in 50 years.
Yeah.
And now they're changing every 50 minutes, it seems.
Yes, that's right. And we're going to be talking about those too.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
we've got a long way to go, and it's exciting, really.
it is. And, this is something that you can be scared by some of the stuff, the changes, the climate change, the economic changes and so forth. Or you can say, this is something to get excited about because we can address these problems. And as scary as they get, and we've got stuff later on in the show that I think is about as scary as anything I've seen. As scary as they get, it's something that our young people, speaking as a 74-year-old, anybody who's younger than 73 is young. Our young people can do something about it, and they have opportunities that are just exciting. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
I think we should. We got another picture coming up of something strange. I've never seen that before.
I keep telling you, Tom, these are party noisemakers. Okay, that is an offshore wind farm. This particular article comes from Power Technology. And what do you got for a title for the article, Tom?
Norwegian power giant Equinor and British Petroleum to deliver 2.5 gigawatts of offshore wind power to New York State.
And what's a gigawatt, Tom?
It's a bigawatt, baby.
A gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts for anybody who is getting bored of hearing Tom say it's a bigawatt. But I like to hear that because, the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant was a little over 600 megawatts. So 0.6 gigawatts. This looks like it's over 4 times that. But in fact, wind turbines don't have a capacity factor. I'm not going to explain that right now. That is as high as nuclear. So this is probably about 2 times as big as a Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant sized nuclear plant in terms of what it's going to deliver.
It's really quite simple. The wind isn't always blowing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Although when you get right down to it, the wind is always blowing somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Equinor and partner BP have been selected to provide close to 2.5 gigawatts of offshore wind power to the state of New York. We're back to New York here. Andrew Cuomo did this, I'll betcha. In the latest renewables solicitation, Equinor and BP will develop 1,260 megawatt, the 1,260 megawatt Empire Wind 2 project and the 1,230 megawatt Beacon Wind 1 project.
Interesting takeaway here is Equinor plans to transport these turbines. It says from Albany. It's probably from Schenectady, where GE is.
Yeah.
On the Hudson River.
Yeah. Well, why not?
Why not?
These turbines are big, and you're not going to stick them in the back of a pickup truck.
Well, we've seen a picture of a trailer used just to carry the blades.
Yes.
And it's got about 16 wheels on
it. These things are not small, and that turbine is going to go inside. The turbine mechanism is going to go inside the nacelle. And what have you said, that the nacelle is big enough to put 4 buses in?
At least 3.
Yeah. So you're talking about something that is really big, and it's not the kind of thing that you'd be moving on a road easily. In fact,
I got news for you guys. They're going to be getting bigger.
Yeah, they are getting bigger. They are indeed. Anyway, got more on that?
Well, the Beacon Wind project is going to be the first U.S. offshore wind market to use high voltage DC connection cables.
That is an interesting point. I had forgotten about that. That is interesting, and it's I don't know how many people would understand the implications of that, but it makes sense. DC cables, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, DC cables are lighter than AC cables.
Well, they got much less loss.
Yeah. And the electrons flow through all of the copper instead of just on the surface.
Exactly.
So you don't need as big a cable to carry the same load. Okay, any more on that?
I don't think so. Let's move along here. We got a nice picture of San Francisco.
Well, I don't know that I think that's a nice picture. It looks to me like something out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. But
what you're seeing there is not a sunset. It's fire.
It's fire, and it's not fire in San Francisco. It's much farther away. And I cannot for the life of me understand where these people are. Do you happen to know, Tom?
Huh?
Do you know where the people are?
What people?
The people standing in the foreground.
Oh, I can't see that on my
Oh,
picture
okay.
here.
I don't know. I don't know where the, I don't, I've never been in the San Francisco area and I don't know much about it, but it looks like these people are standing among huge rocks on sand and at a pretty high elevation. And I don't know where that is. This picture, of course, is one that I find disturbing, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. Anyway, this is an article from CNN, and you undoubtedly have a title for the article, don't you?
I do. I do, as a matter of fact. Not a good title though.
I guess. What do you?
Top scientists warn of ghastly future for the planet as leaders underestimate ecological threats.
Yeah, a team of 17 leading scientists cautioned that the future of the planet is, quote, more dire and dangerous than generally understood, end quote. They warned that unless world leaders face up to the challenge and act urgently, our survival is threatened. And I have to say, there are other points of view here, but all points of view that I know of that come from science say the same thing in the end, and that is we have to act quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And we're getting opposition from the oil companies who don't want to give up the profits.
Well, the oil companies have already given up their profits, I'm
Well,
afraid. Oil,
that's a fact. So,
yeah, the oil industry is in trouble, and in the last 4 years, the value of the stock fell 50%. And it's just, and that's the big companies. The little companies have been going bankrupt right and left.
well,
Um,
the article hits it. We're in a sixth mass extinction.
yes,
Fundamental changes to global capitalism, education, and equality are required to address the problem.
yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I even get to a point where people are talking about saving polar bears and saving various other endangered species. And honestly, I think we've got to think about a bigger picture than saving a species. And people love polar bears. They're beautiful animals. I
Oh, they are.
wouldn't want to try to get close to one, but um, they are beautiful animals. And I'm afraid that trying to save them anywhere but a zoo is not going to work. The the situation has already got too bad. But
Well, we have to save the polar bears, but more importantly, we got to save us.
we have to save us. Yes, that's a good point, Tom. Okay, I think I want to get out of this, don't you?
Yeah, let's move. We got a nice picture here.
We do of a charging station in Colorado. I think I've actually been there, but I don't think the background looks like that quite. This is on Friday, January 12th, and the article comes from Clean Technica.
Colorado approves $110 million transportation electrification plan. This
Ex-
is this is something worth looking at.
yes, it is. XL Energy will deploy about 20,000 charging stations for EVs at residential, commercial, and public sites in Colorado under a $110 million plan approved by the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. At least $20 million is to be invested to promote EV adoption in low-income areas, which is I think an important issue.
Well, we're not going to get a transition to electric vehicles until they're as easy to recharge as your present car is to refill.
Yes, that is correct. And we have one of the items that will be appearing next week that comes from this morning is two different organizations have put together batteries that they say can be charged in less than 10 minutes.
They're making
So
progress, and
they're making
you know,
progress.
a few years from now, we're going to look at that and say that's slow.
Yes, that's right. We will. And as a matter of fact, I think we're going to get to a point very soon where it'll take less time to charge an electric car if the equipment is up to date than it takes to fill a gas tank of a car in a gas station.
Well, something like that has to happen.
Yeah, and it will. I mean, it's the natural progress of science.
A little
So
takeaway here from the article. Colorado's goal is 940,000 charging stations by 2030.
940,000. Wow, that's a lot of charging stations.
More than several.
I guess. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we get a nice picture of a polluting factory here.
A nice picture of a polluting factory. Well put, Tom. This is from AOL, and you
Yeah,
have
this is an interesting article. It's a little bit, it's outdated by about a day.
yeah.
The Trump administration is launching one last assault on climate science.
Yeah, President Donald Trump's term in office will be remembered for many disastrous moments, but one of the most consequential might be its systematic degradation of environmental protections. His administration seems intent on doing more damage as he leaves office. There were a whole bunch of things that happened in the last week where, the Trump administration was making one change or another.
Well, that's just what the article says. I mean,
Yeah.
Trump has been trying to push through as many disastrous environmental policies as possible in his final weeks in office, including attempting to sell off parts of Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which he couldn't pull off.
Yeah.
He wanted to sell it off for oil drilling.
Yes, and there was a big auction up there, and they had expected millions and millions of dollars would come into the federal coffers from that because the oil companies would just pay them, and they got 2 bids from companies nobody knew the name of.
But we've talked about that on this show.
Yeah, we have. It's very unfortunate, but we're gonna. One of the things that now President Biden, it seems so strange to call him that, is doing is he's going systematically through all the presidential orders of Donald Trump and undoing them. And the first one's first,
Absolutely.
But there it is. Now
I don't see how he can do otherwise.
Well, I don't either, but it's going to take a lot of time, and some of these things are going to be hard to reverse.
For sure.
But, there are things, if you look at that picture, the damage that comes from that is going into our lungs. How could the president of the United States, huh?
Yes, it is. We've talked about that on this show.
I guess we have. The president of the United States is supposed to be a servant of the people. And I don't want to get into politics. I'm really sorry. I'm tired of it, and I don't like doing it. Hopefully, we'll be in a situation where it won't be political anymore. Should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, let's take a look at a solar array.
Oh, this is a weird one. I've never seen anything like this before. This is from Renews.
It's a pilot project.
Yes, it is, but it is very interesting. This is from Renews.
Equinor to pilot floating solar oil Norway, off of Norway. And what they're trying to do is see if this stuff will work in rough seas.
In rough seas at latitudes that, when I was in college, we talked about solar and where it would work. And I remember people saying, well, it'll work in the Southwest, but it'll never work in New England. Here they're talking about doing it in Norway.
Not only in Norway, but northern Norway.
Yeah, and this is like Arctic Circle type solar.
Absolutely.
And on top of everything else, they're doing it in water that is not exactly placid. Okay, you read the title.
They got it. Let me just mention the aim is to see how the weather conditions affect the plant as opposed to seeing how much energy is produced.
Yes.
They're trying to see if it's going to work.
Yeah, they are. Equinor is working with Moss Maritime to start testing floating solar in the ocean off the island of Frøya, off Trondheim in Norway. The partnership will build floating solar power plants in the late summer of 2021. So this is just a couple of months away, making it the first of its kind to be situated in rough waters. And I just don't see how they're going to keep the salt water off those panels. And maybe
That's what they're trying to find out.
Yeah, they've probably got this completely engineered. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's only if something works very differently from what they expect that
I think you're right.
It's going to be at all terribly important. Okay, are we done with that, Tom?
Well, there's a quote from the article that says, if we succeed here, we can succeed anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's, yes. Yes, I don't think they could succeed in a coal mine. So I don't think that's exactly correct. Anyway, move on.
Yeah, we get a nice picture of a forest coming up.
We do. And this forest was not with the article. I got that from Unsplash.
Uh-huh.
The article came from Clean Technica.
Cutting emissions to zero can halt climate change in our lifetime. This is a good article.
It is, except, I did a lot of research on this article. And in fact, unfortunately, I did it today, so I couldn't send you a note about it. The person who wrote the article really didn't get everything exactly right. Let me read the blurb here. Buried under doomsday predictions of climate change, there is newer information from Michael Mann, the distinguished scientist. He's the guy who developed what is called the hockey stick curve, in case anybody is interested. He's a very well-known climate scientist. It turns out that if we cut to zero emissions, he tells us, the warming would continue, but only for a few years. And he did, in fact, say that. But he also said it with a bunch of warnings that we have to cut to zero emissions very, very fast.
We do.
Yeah, and she didn't. The thing that the author of this article really didn't do quite right, in my opinion, was to make abundantly clear we can stop. There's really two things. It's not that climate change will get better. It will be that it stops getting worse. So
took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. Instead of having the number of hurricanes, for example, increase practically every year, they'll steady off at what we would call bad. And then maybe at some point in the not terribly distant future, they could start getting better. But that's, steadying off at bad is a whole lot better than just continually getting worse. And the other thing is we really do have to stop the emissions as quickly as possible. And I think we can stop those emissions a lot faster than most people realize. So you got more on that?
No, but I think you're right there. And I think the way to do it is somehow or another tax those emissions.
Well, there are plans to do it, and
I know that.
Carbon tax is something that they've been talking about for some time. So
not very popular with the oil companies. But.
Well, the oil companies are almost getting to a point where they're irrelevant, because they're getting to a point where they're in a state of collapse now. And it didn't happen because Joe Biden was elected president. It happened before that.
I think they're very aware of that, and they're trying to take steps to preserve their position.
Yeah, but some of them are really on the ball, trying to get into renewable energy as fast as they could. And of course, the example that we use very often is Danish Oil and Natural Gas, which is now Ørsted, which sold off all of its fossil fuel assets. It was oil and natural gas, and it's sold off all of the fossil fuel assets and started on almost entirely offshore wind turbines. And they are the biggest installer of offshore wind turbines in the world.
They had to change their name.
They could have kept their name and called it Danish Oil and Natural Gas. It would have been quite a joke. But anyway, okay.
Got an interesting picture coming up here.
We do here, and this is the Moynihan Trail Hall, and that is an escalator.
It's a train hall, not a trail hall.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is a train hall. I must have typed that in wrong. I have trail hall.
Yeah, no, it's for trains.
Yeah, this is definitely for trains, and that is an escalator, and that is, I believe, a photograph, not some piece of artwork.
I think you're right. I think they've completed it.
Yeah, this is
what they're doing is they're taking a building that was next door, very large building that really wasn't being utilized very heavily, and they've converted it.
Yes.
And they basically doubled the size of Penn Station.
Yes. And this is from Clean Technica. They talk about the fact that Penn Station is really not a very exciting building, but look at that.
The building, this new building, is very exciting.
Yes. What do you got for a title for the article, Tom?
New York's $306 billion 2021 infrastructure plan is the largest in the nation. And there's a lot of pictures in this article.
And they're fun. They're like this, like the one we're looking at. You look at that and you say, what?
What is that?
What is that? Well, you can recognize the escalator, but the ceiling, how does that work? Okay, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, we're back to Andrew Cuomo, announced that his state's 2021 infrastructure plan is the largest such plan in the nation, with an expected cost of $306 billion. Now, a billion is a big a million or something. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It includes a lot of support for climate-friendly transportation solutions. And this article is a quick look focusing on them. Now, obviously, what's happened here is Andrew Cuomo, and it was our first article today, made this announcement of a New York State plan, and we're covering that in multiple segments because you couldn't just do it, and in fact, it didn't even come out all on one day. So,
well, what they've done in this particular case, and it's bigger than this, but they've taken 100-year-old James A. Farley post office building next door.
Yeah.
And it's no longer being used as a post office.
Yes.
And it's a substantial building. This is big. I used to work down there. I remember that building.
Yeah.
And they've turned it into a transportation hub.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, it's named after U.S. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Well, I remember Daniel Patrick Moynihan. I always liked him.
Yeah, I remember him.
He was not at my end of the political spectrum, but he was an interesting guy, and I think he was honest. So, and had some integrity. So I had to have a great deal of respect for him.
I recommend you look this one up and look at the pictures because they're kind of fun.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I think people should do that. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica, and I have two pictures for this. There's the first one. Oh my gosh.
Called the Pagurus, which means crab.
Well, what do you have for a title for the article? This is a fun article.
Solar-powered amphibious catamaran concept is a literal land yacht.
Yeah. Let me put on the second picture. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Land yacht. There it is as a land yacht. Obviously, this is an artist's rendering. I doubt
it does not exist yet.
I don't think it's ever going to exist on land.
They'll build one for $29 million.
That'll run on land?
One of these, yeah.
Oh man, they'll build
can't use it on a highway; it's too wide.
You can't transport it on land. Maybe you can run it up on a shore somewhere, but it's just the point of the design, as I see it, and I'm going to go back to the previous picture. The point of the design is that they wanted to come up with a really nice catamaran that would be a really nice yacht and would be solar powered.
Well, we talked about one in the past. It wasn't quite as nice as this one, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
Solar powered catamaran.
Okay. Let me continue with the blurb. No, you haven't wandered into the onion. This is Clean Technica. And this is a real design put forward by an Italian design house, Lazzarini, which sometimes has fun with its designs. Sometimes. It showed the Pagurus, an 82-foot solar-powered, quote, amphibious, end quote, catamaran, send to cruise on land. And, that's an impressive yacht right by itself. The bows here, which are closest to you as a viewer, you see those big, almost black stripes that are elevated out of the water, horizontal on the boat. You can see them here too. Let me go to the next picture. There it is. And there's a guy in the front of that. That'll give you an idea of how big this is. You know, and
those black stripes that you mentioned, they're the windows.
They're windows. Yeah, they're windows.
And cabin. There's cabins in each of them.
Yeah, and this particular yacht will hold. I think it qualifies as a ship because it has a boat on it, but it's 82 feet long. This thing, you'll notice that there's not a lot of chairs and shuttleboard rigmarole and stuff like that, railings even where people can party on the deck. That deck is inaccessible to the passengers. That's all solar panels. So there it is.
Interesting concept in any case.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you know, we can't stay on it forever. So I'll go to the next item. We have a Cypress 6, and it tells you that it's a wind turbine, Tom. So don't tell me you don't know what it is.
More than 8,000 GE Renewable Energy onshore wind turbines worldwide.
Yeah. In November, GE passed a milestone. Over 8,000 GE renewable offshore wind turbines stand in 23 U.S. states and 10 other countries. The 2-megawatt turbines alone have 20 gigawatts of installed capacity worldwide, enough to power the equivalent of 12.9 million homes around the world. And, you know, I didn't know that the Cypress, well, I probably did know, but I had forgotten. The Cypress would get as big as 6 megawatts, but there it is.
Well, most of them are 2 megawatts, but yes.
Yeah, most of them are.
This isn't the giant ones that we've been talking about that are 12 and 13 megawatts.
And now 14.
And now 14, yep.
Yeah. But this was something that, you know, was just kind of celebrating the fact that GE had been putting these things in. And, you know, GE as a company has gone through in the last 5 years or so some really tough times. And this particular part of GE seems to be prospering, the making of
these guys have been doing all right, but GE has made some monstrous blunders.
Yes, and nuclear industry stuff was one of them. Natural gas was another. So
interesting takeaway from this one.
Yeah,
these turbines can operate at over 100%.
At over 100%,
which means they generate more power than they expected.
I love it. Yeah. You know, what you remind me of here, Tom, is a guy who got into a chat with, and he was kind of strongly against the idea of installing renewable energy. And he said, you go to, you know, 20%, whatever, is pretty easy. But when you get that last 5%, 10%, getting from 90 or 95% to 100%, that's going to be really hard. And the thing he didn't understand is it's not a limit. You're not bumping up against a limit here. You can go over 100%. And in fact, Paraguay, the country in South America, is getting about 1,000% of the electricity that it needs from renewables, which is
mostly hydro, isn't it?
Oh, it's almost all hydro, but it is 1,000%. How do they do that? It's simple. They sell the excess to Argentina and Brazil.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. Why didn't I think of that? Right. Well, if you're such a genius, why aren't you rich? I don't know. Anyway, this is, I guess I've read this, except for saying that this comes from a publication called REVE, or maybe it's just the initials, REVE, which I think is the English version of a Spanish speaking magazine. There's some amazing stuff happening in South America and in Spain, by the way, particularly in Chile.
Well, we'll be talking about Spain in a little while.
Yeah, we will. Okay, do you want to go on to this next one, Tom?
Yeah, let's move. We got a picture of a fire in Portugal.
Yeah, we do. And unfortunately, that is not artwork. That is real. That's not Dante's Inferno happening in literature. That is an inferno in Portugal that is real. It makes me really depressed.
And they say that the fire has been stoked by unseasonal heat.
Yeah, well, I think there's no doubt about that. This is from Red, Green, and Blue.
Worried about Earth's future? Well, the outlook is worse than even scientists can grasp.
Yeah, this is when we started this show. This is one of those things that I said there were things that were scary, and this is one of them. A research paper published this week reviews over 150 studies to produce a stark summary of the state of the natural world. It says future environmental conditions will be far more dangerous than experts currently believe. Now, I want to say, here is the statement on this. This kind of study is not necessarily correct, and what they were doing was they were looking at a bunch of studies to see if the people in one narrow focus of science understood what was happening in the next narrow focus over. It might be in the same discipline, and they just don't even both know. And what is the effect? And the effect here is the scientists are failing to take into account things that are known to other scientists that they don't know themselves.
They take a very narrow-minded approach, apparently.
Yeah, well, this is natural. I mean, I tried to figure out, on one occasion, I tried to figure out what happens when you add 1 plus 1, which sounds so simple. But, there's many different kinds of algebra. And if you add 1 plus 1, in some of them, you get 1.
Yeah.
And in some of them, you get 0.
Uh-huh.
And in some of them, you get -1. And, I was looking at Boolean algebra. Do you know anything about Boolean algebra, Tom?
I don't.
Yeah, well, I was looking at Boolean algebra, and I found that there were something like 20 different kinds of Boolean algebra. My conscience, I didn't even know that there were 2. And I barely even knew what the 1 was. But, they get into these things where they have a narrow focus. I think a mathematician could spend his whole life just working with Boolean algebra. Does he know anything about trigonometry? Yes, he does. He went to high school. What can I say?
Well, from the article, it says the problems are tied to human consumption and population growth.
Yes.
And the damage could be felt for centuries.
Could be what?
Felt for centuries.
Felt for centuries. Yes, it could be. And in fact, it could be felt longer than that, but not in the present longer than that. I mean, the situation that we're in is going to change the world. There's no doubt about that. What we have to do is get into a position where we're going to change it for the better. And honestly, I think we can do that. I think we can make a situation where our grandchildren will live in a more in an environment that's more fun, that's better.
Let's look at a picture of somebody who can help us do it.
Okay, let's do that. There he is, Joe Biden. I think he's been a busy guy the last few hours.
I would say.
Okay, we're still on Sunday, January 17th.
Biden says his advisors will lead with, quote, science and truth.
Yes, Daily Herald provided us with this. It's not a big publication. President-elect Joe Biden has introduced his slate of scientific advisors with the promise that they would summon, quote, science and truth, end quote, to combat the coronavirus pandemic, climate crisis, and other challenges. Quote, science is discovery. It is not fiction, end quote, Biden said. Quote, it is also about hope, end quote. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Joe Biden has placed healing the nation at a very high level.
Oh, so absolutely. And he's got a lot of healing to do.
Yeah, he sure does. Okay, we're up to Monday, January 9th. January 18th. Why did I say 9th? Maybe it's because 1 plus 8 is 9. And we have a picture here of an artist's conception of a floating system.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's all three kinds. Well, it is all 3 kinds of renewables. It's got wind. It's got solar, and then it's got storage.
Well, the storage in this case is hydrogen, and this is from Renews.
Exactly.
And what do you have for a title?
Acciona, which is the name of a company, leads a Spanish floating green hydrogen study.
Acciona is to coordinate a project to design and validate Spain's first offshore plant for generating, storing, and distributing green hydrogen. The Ocean H2 project will study several scenarios for implementation, including the use of floating wind and solar for offshore hybrid power generation. And
we're going to be hearing a lot about hydrogen in the future.
The amount of time and effort that is going into hydrogen is just astonishing. And one of the things I'm thinking of actually writing an article about this. One of the things that's interesting is we've got 2 or 3 huge multi-billion-dollar operations going into Australia where they're going to make hydrogen and ship it to Singapore, Indonesia, and Japan. Egypt says it wants to put together hydrogen making facilities so that it can be a power hub. Ireland is doing the same thing, and I'm sitting there thinking they can't all do this because hydrogen can be made anywhere there's water.
Well, you need a source of power, though.
Well, yeah, the sun or the wind. Those are both sources.
There you go.
Do you have more on this, Tom?
The project will be simultaneously developed in 6 Spanish regions.
Yeah.
So they're putting these things all over Spain to try to see which place works best.
Yeah.
And they're not all in the ocean. A couple of them are in rivers.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
The world is full of lakes and rivers and oceans and things. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one, Tom.
Why not?
Okay, here we have the Peel Renewable Energy Solar Farm, and this is from PV Magazine, Australia. What do you have for title?
The Solar Allure of Western Australia's New Model Business Park.
Yeah, Peel Renewable Energy is about to energize a 1.2 megawatt solar farm in Western Australia. It's a fresh approach to industrial estate development based on a phased microgrid. And phased here refers to development, not to, the number of cycles.
Electrical phases.
Yeah, that's right. The infrastructure is small while renewably powered microgrid grows to meet the needs of incoming business.
Well, when I first looked at this thing, I saw 1.2 megawatts. That's small. We got 5 megawatts right here in town.
That's right. But what they're talking about here is a business plan, and the business plan starts with something that's small
that's exactly what
expand.
They're doing. It's different.
Yeah, and this is something that could be done anywhere really, in terms of the physics of the thing. It's there's a certain amount of zoning problems and things like that would have to become overcome.
They're starting small and growing it as the need for it grows.
Right, and that is the point.
And as it grows, this is interesting, they're going to lease rooftop space from the occupants to grow the electricity supply.
Don't you love this? Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to go on. Our next picture is a picture of the southern United States. And you can tell just by looking at it, because right there in front of you is, well, a little bit to the left of front of you is Houston. And you should be able to tell that right away, shouldn't you, Tom?
I thought it was New Orleans myself. But
well, I think New Orleans, New Orleans is to the right of that. And I think New Orleans is not just, that's a kind of a long blob there. But I think
you're right.
That's New Orleans and Baton Rouge together. And then, you go across, and on the right side is Florida.
This photograph was taken from the International Space Station.
And here I thought somebody flew a high kite. This is from SciTech Daily. And what do you have for title?
Weird asymmetry. Nights are warming faster than days across much of the planet.
The University of Exeter scientists studied warming from 1983 to 2017 and found that days and nights have not warmed at the same rate. Areas where nighttime warming is greater are about twice as large as those where daytime warming is greater. And so you've got an asymmetry by time of day, and you've got an asymmetry by place. And I don't know, but I think here in Brattleboro, the coldest night of the winter is probably well over 10 degrees warmer than it was when I was a kid.
I've been observing that, and I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, it used to be we have 0, 10 below, and maybe we may have 2 or 3 days in a year. It used to be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's right. And I can remember nights when it got down to 30 below. But, you know.
I can't remember them, but.
Well, I don't think you were around this part of the world at that time, Tom.
I think I was in a warmer part of the world.
I think so. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, January 19th, and we have a picture of school buses. There they are, Lion school buses.
That's the name of the company that built them.
Yep. And this is an article from Clean Technica, and I found this really fascinating, and I think some other people will too.
Well, Miami-Dade starts transition to electric school bus fleet, which makes an awful lot of sense.
Yes, it does. Miami-Dade, but the way it happened is really interesting. Miami-Dade County Public Schools have decided to convert its fleet of diesel buses to an electric fleet. Holly Thorpe, a middle school student, had used her science fair project to show the school board that diesel buses had levels of CO2 in them that are about 10 times the EPA limit. So this girl in what, 7th, 8th grade,
yeah,
she did a science project and found out that the air in these school buses was just a little bit toxic. And that was because they were running diesel.
Well, the article goes into saying that, you know, the students are well aware of this.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like breathing diesel fumes.
I don't blame them.
I don't either.
Yeah. But it was interesting to me that the school board was willing to listen to Holly Thorpe, you know, not exactly the highest paid person in town, and that she was able to move them. And then it took them a year to get to the point where they could actually make the decision.
A little bit of lethargy going on there.
Well,
huh?
It's not lethargy. It's they were running up against obstacles in rules and stuff like that about how they buy things and so forth. That sort of thing happens. Okay, we have to proceed.
Yeah, we got a picture of Bill McKibben there.
We do have a picture of Bill McKibben, and there it is. This, by the way, is 2011, and it's obviously not January. So this is from the BBC.
Well, he was talking at the Stop the Keystone XL pipeline rally back in 2011.
That's
and
correct.
The article says that Biden to cancel it on his first day, and he sort of did.
Yeah, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is to cancel, and this is going back to the past, is to cancel the controversial Keystone XL pipeline on its first day in office. North American media report the pipeline is projected to carry oil nearly 1,200 miles from the Canadian province of Alberta down to Nebraska to join an existing pipeline. And Keystone XL, without Keystone XL, that oil is still going to flow. It's just going to flow in the pipeline that's a whole lot longer. So.
Well, it goes down to Houston, where they put it on ships and sell it overseas.
Yeah. Although, you know, the world is changing, Tom, and how much longer oil is going to be sold much, I don't know.
Well, it's tar sands oil, and that's expensive to exploit.
Yeah, it's expensive to move. It's got sand in it, so it abrades the insides of the pipes as it moves through the pipes, which creates leaks.
All of this is true.
Yeah, this is it's not high quality stuff, but even if it were, we shouldn't be burning oil. Okay, we've got an item from Reeve, unless you got more on that.
Well, it just says that Trump overturned a decision by Obama.
Yes. Oh, well.
And now Biden's going to overturn the decision by Trump.
Yes. Okay, we're back to an article by Reeve, and here is another picture, and this time of a larger GE Holly X turbine. And
these are the big guys.
These are the big guys. And this is not New York. This is New Jersey where this is happening. What do you have for a title, Tom?
GE Renewable Energy finalizes contracts for 1.1 gigawatts of ocean wind offshore projects in New Jersey.
Yeah. GE Renewable Energy will supply Haliade X wind turbines for Ørsted's ocean wind offshore wind project off the east coast of New Jersey. It could be the state's first project to feature the 13 megawatt variant of the GE Renewable Energy Haliade X platform. And they are going to be building components for these wind turbines in New Jersey.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the things that they have to do is they have to get the blades to these turbines. They've got to get the masts to these turbines. And
they get them down the Hudson River.
Yeah, well, some of them are going to be built in the area of Philadelphia, Trenton, and so forth, and brought down the Delaware River.
Delaware River.
Yeah. There, obviously, it is much cheaper to build these things in the United States if they're going to be used off the U.S. shore than it is to build them in Denmark and bring them to the United States. So
absolutely,
it means that people are going to be employed both on land and at sea, putting this stuff together. And 1.1 gigawatts of ocean wind energy. What is that again, Tom?
A bigawatt.
1.1 gigawatts. Yeah. And the amount of electricity you'd get out of that would be probably equal to maybe a little bit less. No, probably equal to the amount that they got out of Vermont Yankee.
I got a number.
Oh, do you?
The 15 active commercial leases for U.S. offshore wind development has the potential to support approximately 25 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity. Now, that's the entire country. That's the Gulf Coast, that's the East Coast, and the West Coast.
But that's just the areas under development.
These are active.
Yeah, and what's happening is there's a lot of places that could be put under development, and they haven't really started to get active on them yet.
I don't understand why, but it would seem to be obvious, but it's starting to happen now.
Yes, it is. Okay, we are up to Wednesday, January 20th, and we have a picture of more wind turbines. Let me get this up. Where's my, there it is.
This is a demo.
Yeah.
And it says Ørsted to press ahead with a green hydrogen pilot. There we go again, green hydrogen.
That's right. This is from Renews. And by the way, this day, I think there were 4 or 5 different articles at my blog out of the 15 that were posted that were about green hydrogen. And in this particular case, well, let me read the synopsis. Ørsted has taken final investment decision on the Danish demonstration project H2RES, which will use offshore wind to produce renewable hydrogen. The project is expected to produce its first hydrogen in late 2021 and will be Ørsted's first renewable hydrogen project in operation. Now, this is actually a picture here of the demonstration project, which is a 2 megawatt. Yeah, it's real. 2 megawatt project. And so those wind turbines that you see there are really small. You know, they're compared to the big ones that are offshore.
Absolutely.
And the power, the plant that you see there, that thing that looks like an industrial plant, but it's white, is not going to be producing any emissions. It is just making hydrogen. So,
well, the purpose of this thing is to investigate how to best combine an electrolyzer, which makes the hydrogen, with the fluctuating power supply from offshore wind.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. You know, and when you think about the fact that wind turbines are what's the word? They're shut down temporarily if there's too much power on the grid. That shutdown could be a period of time that's used for electrolyzing and making hydrogen, which means that the wind turbines would be more valuable. So this is something that, you know, they're working on.
Oh, absolutely.
You have more on that?
I don't think I do.
Okay,
I mean, I do, but I think we've said the important stuff.
Okay, we will go up to our next item, which is from the Commons, which, by the way, is a local free news organ that's in the Connecticut River Valley, and it's based in Brattleboro here. And that is something that a lot of people will recognize. It is the Vermont Yankee Nuclear Power Plant.
Is that what that is? Huh?
I think it is. Yes, it's not. It's not George Bolton's cow barn.
Well, I was interested when I looked at that is how much that building resembles the building that's in Mecca called the Kaaba.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that.
It looks just like it.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, don't tell anybody who's Muslim; they might take it badly. Not that
What's next for Vermont Yankee property? That's what they're trying to figure out. And it's worth reading. Or pick up a Commons and read it.
Yeah, this is something that is important for local people who are interested in local things. It's also of interest to people at a more far afield. Let me read the synopsis. A new land inventory report offers a series of possibilities for the site of the retired Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant to eventually be used for industry, recreation, preserving habitat, or even recognizing the Abenaki relationship to the banks of the Connecticut River, past and present. So there are a lot of things that could be done with this. Yes, it is. Absolutely. All of those. All of the above. I was the guy who said that we should take the state of Pennsylvania, remove every scrap of evidence of civilization from it, and allow it to go back to nature. And the only people who would be allowed in there would be American Indians. And I had a friend who was an American Indian. I asked him, do you prefer Native American? He said, no. More than half the people in the United States are Native Americans. You were born in Kansas. That makes you a Native American. I said, well, why is Indian better? He said, everybody knows Indian is wrong. Yeah. So very nice guy, by the way. It's
interesting that the site of Vermont Yankee sister plants, which is Roe and Maine Yankee, have not been put back into commercial use.
Yes. Well, these nuclear power plants are not easy to get rid of once you've got them.
Well, they got a lot of problems. They got stored waste.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they have to decommission the damn thing. And that takes years.
Yes, it does. It's not an easy project, and there's a lot of money in it for the people who are doing it, but it's not an easy project. Okay, we have to press on. We've got one more.
This is the last item we have.
It is indeed, and we have a picture of a hydrogen electrolyzer.
How strange! Huh?
How strange! This particular one is in Fukushima Daiichi, the Fukushima Prefecture, where the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster happened. And this is from a publication called Energy Storage News.
Well, prefecture is analogous to a U.S. state.
Yes.
And it says continuous fall in battery prices is enabling the rapid rise of renewable energy.
Yeah, renewable energy uptake and the falling costs of battery energy storage are inexorably linked as the global economy faces a crucial decade ahead of its urgent need to decarbonize, according to work by McKinsey and Company. And they talk in here about the rapid fall in the cost of batteries as
it mentions that renewables will make up around 55% of global power generation by 2035.
I think actually my opinion is it'll be more than that.
But it could very well be.
Yeah. Nevertheless, this is the battery prices are enabling the rise in renewable energy.
We ain't seen nothing yet.
Yes. And the business of hydrogen electrolyzing is linked to that because it's all a matter of storing energy.
Well, we have now figured out how to store hydrogen. 10 years ago, we couldn't do it.
Okay. I know that there's been a bunch of progress that was made, and this article does have it.
Well, let's see. Half of global power is likely, well, I just said that, it's likely to become from renewable sources by 2035.
Yep.
This will be largely enabled by batteries.
Tom, we're at the end of our hour.
I think we are.
So we're going to tell everybody to have a magnificently tranquil week. We after surviving 4 years of non-tranquility, I think we can appreciate that, and it's time to say goodbye. So goodbye, everybody.
Imagine me waving goodbye.
Yes. Imagine me too.